beshlach, taken from the Novi Shoftim, one of the most interesting and fascinating stories that exists in the Tanakh, and it concludes with the great song of devorah. I doubt if we'll be able to finish the entire thing in one session. The Tanakh begins, the Haftorah begins, with devorah ishon deviyah. Eishes lapidos, hishoftos Yisrael b'Isahi. There was a woman called devorah who was a prophetess. Chazal tell us there were 7 women that were prophetesses in Jewish history. And we have records of all 7. And devorah was one of the 7, and she was one of the great women of Israel. And we'll see that in the fact that she not only was a prophetess, she was also the temporal leader of the Jewish people. She was the judge. So she was a woman of remarkable qualities. A woman that possessed in her great spirituality, and she also had great strength, as we will see. She was the man of the Jewish people. She was the one that was able to stand up to the terrible situation that the Jewish people found themselves in, and to lead them to victory, and to impose her will upon the Jewish people and upon those who did not want originally to do her will. And that is part of her great strength. Eishes Lapidos, she was the wife of a man called Lapidos, whom we know almost nothing about, as can be expected from a man who is married to such a strong woman. Chazal say that Lapidos is because he lit the torches of Torah in the Beis HaMedrash. Whether that meant that he was a great scholar, or whether he just hung out in the Beis HaMedrash to get away from home, is not clear. But in Yiddish and in Jewish folklore, a husband of less than domineering qualities has always been called Lapidus. And if you'll go to Paris and you'll see the famous shop, Ted Lapidus, you should know that he's Lapidus. Right? That's where it started. Now, the Tanakh tells us, Vehi Yosheves Tachas Tomer Devorah. She sat under a palm tree called Tomer Devorah. In other words, that was where her office was at. Now, the Jewish people were really in exile in their own land. The 2 great powers in the land were Yovin, the king of Canaan, whose headquarters were in the city of Chatzor HaGalilit, Chatzor in the Upper Galilee. If you can see the ruins of the city of Yovin today, it's right outside the kibbutz Ayelet HaShachar. There's a good milchika restaurant, Ayelet HaShachar. And right outside are the ruins of Chatzor. And they're also in Chatzor now. The Gera Hasidim have built a large Hasidic shikun, and it's a very interesting place, a beautiful place. And the scenery there is beautiful. It's starkly beautiful. So Chatzor is it's north of the Sea of Galilee. In the time of the Tanakh, in fact, until 1955, there was a lake north of the Sea of Galilee called Lake Chula. And one of the first projects of the Israel bond drive was to drain the swamp and make it into farmland. Today it is really one of the most fertile places in the world because of the fact that for so many thousands of years it had water and swamp and vegetation and fertilizer and everything going on there, organic matter. And the land of the swamp was divided among the kibbutzim in that area, and if you stand on the Golan and look directly down, one of the great sights in Eretz Yisrael, if you look west from Golan, directly under the parapet of the Golan, are the fields that were carved from the Chula swamp. But in the time of the Tanakh, there was a lake there called Lake Chula. And the city of Hatzor is directly between Lake Chula and the Sea of Galilee, and about 5 to 6 miles west of the Jordan River. So Yovin controlled the Galilee. South of the Galilee was controlled by Eglon Melech Moab, the king of Moab, whose headquarters were in Transjordan and Rabat Bnei Ammon, what is today the city of Rabat, the city of Amman rather, King Hussein's hangout. And the Jews were caught between the hammer and the anvil. These were two enormously powerful tribes, very warlike, and they were very advanced in the Bronze Age. They had chariots, and the Jews did not. They had very strong metalworking and metal industry, and the Jews did not. The Jews were agrarian. They were farmers and shepherds, and therefore the Jews were outmanned and outgunned. And after a long series of defeats, they were not in a position really to mount any sort of meaningful offensive to be able to take their own country into their own hands. So they were subservient in their own country at the time that she began her reign. Understand that in order to understand the greatness of the woman, because she takes the Jewish people from a position of subservience and of being vassals into a position of enormous strength and of being the masters of their country for the first time since Yoshua brought them into the country. So she didn't even have a building. If you wanted to go to judge, you went to Tomer Devorah. Tomer Devorah was the palm tree of Devorah, which was Bein HaRama Uvein Beisel, which was between Rama and Beisel. Now, where that is exactly, they are both very far south of the Galilee. They are near Yerushalayim. They were both in the part of Eretz Yisrael that belonged to the tribe of Binyamin. Binyamin occupied from Yerushalayim northward, and Yehuda occupied from Yerushalayim southward. And so they were very close to Yerushalayim. Some say Roma, it's not clear to us where Roma is. There are 3-4 Romas, depending which guide you get. Some say that it's the city that the Arabs today call Ramallah, which is the main Arab city north of Jerusalem, about 15 kilometers north of Jerusalem. Some say that it's the Arab village called El Ram, which is between Ramallah and Jerusalem. Some say that Ramah is the Arab village of Nebi Samuel, where the prophet Shmuel Hanavi, by tradition, is supposed to be buried. So it's around there. I always tell the joke that I heard from the Satmar Rav, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, that we visited our home, Miami Beach, so one of the Chassidim was talking about Israel, and he was decrying the fact that they showed him numerous burial places of great people, and he said he was certain that those were not the burial places at all. So the Rebbe said, but you can be sure of one thing, he says, it's not in Brooklyn. So where Ramah is, there are different opinions. It's not clear, but you can be certain it's not in Brooklyn. Uvein Beisel, we know where that is. In fact, today there is a settlement in Beisel. There's a yeshiva in Beisel. Beisel is about 30 kilometers northeast of Yerushalayim, in the beginning, in the end of the part of the tribe of Binyamin. And Beisel was the dividing line later between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, between the northern 10 tribes. And Beisel was the place where our father Jacob had the great dream of the ladder that stretches from earth to heaven. And Beisel was also the place where Yerovam ben Nevat placed the golden calves for the Jewish people to worship Avodah Zarah and not continue to Yerushalayim. So Beisel is a very historic site, both positively and negatively. And it's one of the famous landmarks in Israel today, and it can be seen there today. So she was encamped between Ramah and Beisel, Bahar Ephraim, in the beginning of the mountains of Ephraim. There is a spine of mountains that runs up the middle of Eretz Yisrael. It begins with Hebron. So it's all the same mountains, but the names of the mountains change, even though it's the same body of mountains, just as it does in the United States. The Appalachians become the Adirondacks, become the Laurentians in Canada, but it's the same mountain escarpment. So the mountains begin in Hebron, so they're called the mountains of Hebron. Then between Hebron and Yerushalayim, they're called the mountains of Yehuda. And then north of Yehuda, they're called the mountains of Yerushalayim, the 7 mountains that surround Yerushalayim. North of Yerushalayim, they're called the mountains of Binyamin, and north of the mountains of Binyamin, they are called Horei Ephraim, the mountains of Ephraim. So she was at the border between Binyamin and Ephraim, right where the mountains of Ephraim begin. That's why north of Ramallah already begin the mountains of Ephraim. And that stretches to Shechem, all the way up till it comes to the upper Galilee, to Tzfas. All that range of mountains, Meron, Tzfas, that's all one set of mountains that runs through the middle of the country. So the Jewish people came up to her for judgment. She was the final arbiter of all matters in dispute, and the Sanhedrin sat with her. That's what the Medrash says. The Sanhedrin sat with her where she was. It was probably the safest place in Israel as far as the Jewish people were concerned. It was also the place where Torah was. We will see in the song of devorah, we'll see how she speaks about the people that were Moser Nefesh to keep the Torah alive in her time. Her time is no different than any other time. The Torah stood in danger of being destroyed and forgotten amongst the people of Israel, and certain stubborn people at great costs maintained it, and they lived together in this movable camp under the palm tree of devorah. Now there are many that say that the palm tree of devorah was like a flag that she had. It was like her coat of arms. And before Beis Yaakov became popular as the name of schools for girls, most Jewish educational institutions for women were called Tomer Devorah, the palm tree of Devorah. And in fact, I think in the square today, it's still called Tomer Devorah, because Tomer Devorah is not so much a place as it is a concept. It's an idea. It's an emblem, and it's named after her. Needless to say that her name became one of the most popular women's names in the Jewish history of naming. She sent the message. The Tanakh was written by Ruach HaKodesh, written by Nevuah, so it has the ability in 3-4 words to do, to paint the whole picture for us, like in such sharp relief. She had enough. The Medrash says, the Nevuah, the prophecy, told her that God now would be on their side, that if the Jewish people struck, they would be able to rid themselves of their enemies. They would give a resounding defeat to their enemies, and they would be able to take over the land and to settle themselves permanently in these areas of the country. Now, imagine this. You got an old lady, and she tells you that now is the time to go to war, right? Rebbetzin and Lapidus. So there's nobody ready to go to war. The Jewish people are not in the mood for it. There's nobody that's willing to risk it. She cannot raise a regular army. And on top of it, the Jewish people are divided into 12 different tribes. The Jewish people have already had a civil war between themselves, an actual civil war, in which the tribe of Binyamin fought the rest of the Jewish people regarding a horrendous incident which the Tanakh records for us, Pelegesh Begiva. And the Jewish people are more fractured than usual. There is no unity within the Jewish people whatsoever, and she cannot raise an army. And yet she has the imperative that God has told her, now's the time to do it. So she remembers that there's one man that listens to her, not her husband. That man is Barak ben Avinoam, one of the great names again. Barak is lightning. So So there's a pshat in the Medrash that was like a sarcastic name because he was more like molasses than like lightning. They called him that. From the Medrash, it's mashma that that's not his real name. But that was the name that they called him, Barak. Ben Avinoam, Mikedesh Naphtali, and he lived in the city of Kedesh Naphtali. The city of Kedesh Naphtali you can see today also. There's a great tell next to it. Kedesh the last people who were in Kedesh Naphtali were the Crusaders in the 13th century, who built a great castle, fortress. That you can see the ruins of it today, and it's built on top of naturally of an Herodian fortress. Herod built the fortress. But Kedesh Naphtali was always a great armored city, a walled city. Kedesh Naphtali was one of the 6 Orei Miklot, one of the 6 cities of refuge which existed in Eretz Yisrael. 3 were in Transjordan, and 3 were in Eretz Yisrael. So the 3 that were in Eretz Yisrael were Hebron, Shechem, and Kedesh Naphtali. Those were the 3 cities of refuge. And Kedesh Naphtali is north of Lake Chule. It is north of Chatzor. It's really towards the top of the Upper Galilee. It's towards Metula already. That's Kedesh Naphtali, and that's where the tribe of Naphtali lived, and they were completely separated from the rest of the Jewish people. Because in between Kedesh Naphtali, this northern section, and where the Jewish people were in the southern section, you had the king of Canaan, you had Yovin, that was all under his control, so there was no easy passage. So she sent and she called for Barak ben Avinoam Mikedesh Naphtali, and she got him to come. So again, he risks his life coming. It's called Kedesh Naphtali, by the way, because there are 6 or 7 cities in Israel that are called Kedesh. Just as there are a number of cities that are called Chatzor. That's why we say Chatzor HaGlili, Chatzor in the Galil. There's a Chatzor that's further south. There are many, many cities, and it's true all over the world. There are many. The name is used many times for many different cities. Vatomer Elov, and she said to him as follows. This is the message. Halo means it's for certain, it's for sure. I'm not telling you, wishful thoughts. I'm not telling you what I hope will be. I'm telling you the facts. Halo Tzivo Hashem Elokei Yisrael. The Lord God of Israel has commanded us. Even though you didn't hear the commandment, I heard it. Leichu Mashachto Bahar Tavor. Go, Mashachto means pull the Jewish people to you, to the mountain of Tabor. The mountain of Tabor, Mount Tabor, is a perfectly round mountain in the Galilee. Once you see it, you never forget it. It is perfectly round. It rises up of the plain of the Amek of the valley of Jezreel. It is not far from Megiddo, from Armageddon, and it controls, when you stand on Har Tavor, you see its strategic importance because it controls all of the east-west and north-south roads through the Galilee. And the person or the army that controls Har Tavor controls the traffic through the Galilee. That's always been true, and that is true today as well. So you shall attract them, Moshachto, drag them out. She said, they're not going to come to you. You have to figure out a way to get an army and get it up to Har Tavor, get it up to Mount Tabor. So she said, I don't know who else is going to come to this war. But you bring at least 10,000 men from your tribes who are in the northern Galilee. From the tribe of Naphtali, which was in the eastern part of the northern Galilee, and the tribe of Zvulun, which was in the western part of the northern Galilee. You somehow get the basic nucleus of the army. Umoshachti elecho el nachal kishon es Sisro zartzvo yovin. I shall pull to you. In other words, Sisra was the general of Yovin Melech Canaan. Sisera was the greatest tactician. He was the greatest warrior of his time. The Medrash says that the mention of his name was enough to strike fear in the hearts of enemies. And he had never lost an engagement in his entire career. And Sisera was the expert, we would say today, in armored warfare. He was the expert with the chariots and with the spears and with the arrows. And he never made a tactical mistake, except now. And she tells him that when you mobilize at Har Tavor, he will naturally hear, his informants will come and tell him that the Jewish army, the Jews have organized an army and they're on Har Tavor, so he will come out to attack you because he's overconfident. He figures that he'll wipe you off the face of the earth. And he therefore will take a position that will be tactically inferior. He's going to be on the bottom and you're going to be on the top. He's going to have his back to the river, something which no good general should ever allow to happen, but which all good generals sooner or later allow to happen. And he will therefore be in a position that he can be had, because he tactically has made a serious error here. Now, Nahal Kishon is no big rivers in Israel. I remember that one of the first times that I crossed the Hudson at the Tappan Zee Bridge. So there, the Hudson is just enormous. And what a river, and the view and the Palisades. And I had with me a Jew from Israel who had never been in the United States before, and he saw that river. And I could see that he thought in his mind's eye, of the Jordan, which is 5 steps across. So he said to me, why couldn't we have a river like that? Right? Why couldn't God have given us a river? But the truth is that if we had the Hudson instead of the Jordan, so then the water problem in Israel would be non-existent. But what the rivers that are described in the Tanakh are small rivers. You go this summer when Jackie and I were in Yerushalayim, so we went on the hottest day of the year on an archaeological tour to the pools of Siloam, which, anyway, but when you're there, since water, that's the holy waters, that's the Megichon, that's what, because it's all very small, very minute in our terms of waters. In South Africa, you see the Zambezi River, that's the Mississippi, the Missouri, the Colorado. So when the Tanakh here describes Nahal Kishon, you should not have in your mind that you're talking here about a great river in terms of size, but it's a great river in terms of history and location. So he will come, Sisera, Sartzro, Yovin, Asrichbo, he's going to bring all his chariots, that's Hamono, his mob. Because with a victorious army, there always came a mob who was going to pick up the booty, the hangers-on. And I shall give him over, God says, in your hand. That's the message that she tells Barak. And Barak answers her. If you'll go with me, then I'll go. I'm afraid to go by myself. If you don't go, I won't go. Not a very reassuring answer. So, the Meforshim say a number of thoughts here. Thought number one is he may not have trusted her. So, it always helps to have the person that predicts victory to go on the field of battle with you. Test the prediction firsthand. And the second thing is that he needed her for moral and spiritual support. He said, they won't listen to me. If you'll come, then they'll go. We'll be able to be successful. But without you, it won't be. Now, that is not what the prophecy had been. She had told him that I'm telling you to go. So she answers him, Vatomer, so she said, okay, I'll go with you. But you should know that you just lost most of the honor and the glory of the contest. Ephes means but. However, one of the great words. The word Ephes also in Hebrew means zero. because when you say but or however, you are in effect making a zero of what preceded it. And Hebrew is a very economical, concise language, so we don't have extra words. So that's why that's the word ephes. But, however, he will not have the glory that you think that you're going to have on the road. In other words, if you would have gone by yourself, then you would have the war, so then you would have the glory. You would be remembered as the great conqueror. But now that's not going to happen. She said, I'm glad to go with you, but you'll see that you're not going to have Sisra's scalp. Ki b'yad isha yimkor Hashem Sisra. God will give Sisra over in the hands of a woman, which in that milieu and in that time was a demeaning thing for the warrior to fall by the hands of a woman. See, since gunpowder and firearms, so it doesn't make any difference who pulls the trigger. You don't have to be 6'8" and 300 pounds to pull the trigger effectively. The modern warfare, so to speak, equalized all the combatants. But in the ancient world, it was basically war was brute strength. And since the men were stronger and larger and bigger, so therefore losing to a woman was ignominious defeat. And here, Barak is not going to be able to kill Sisera, but a woman will kill him. Barak thinks that the woman is devorah. That devorah is talking about herself, that the victory will be hers. But devorah, in her eyes of the prophet, sees that there's another woman that's waiting for him at the end. And that she is the one that will kill him. And she returned. She returned with Barak to Kedesh Naphtali, where together they would muster the army. Together they would raise these 10,000 men that would form the nucleus of the army to be able to come to the attack. Vayazek Barak es Zulun ves Naphtali Ketcha. Vayazek in Hebrew means he mobilized. Why? Because what the word Vayazek is from the word Zoak, to cry. He sent criers, like town criers, announcers, to every village. And he brought them to Kedesh Naphtali. Vayal Baraglov, and there came, he made go by foot, in his footsteps, but he took infantry, because he had no cavalry and he had no chariots. Aseres Alfei, she got the 10,000 men that she needed. Atal Imo Devorah, and Devorah also. Now the Tanakh tells us a side story, a subplot. Now the Tanakh always does this. I mentioned it to you many times. The Tanakh sees history in its own eyes. We don't see it that way. We see it, we like to think that we see the story correctly, etc. Here there's a subplot. The subplot is in order to explain to us how Yoel is going to come into the picture and how she is going to be the one that's going to kill Sisera. So the Tanakh tells us, V'chever hakeni nifrod mekayim. Chever hakeni. This was the family of Yisro, of Moshe's father-in-law. Now this family converted and became Jews. And when they came to Eretz Yisrael, they lived near Yericho, and they lived in the southern part of the country. And they were called Keni or Kayin, Mibnei Chovov Chosei Moshe, and they were the descendants of Chovov. Chovov in Israel had 7 names. One of his names was Chovov, the beloved one, because he loved the Jewish people and he loved the God of Israel. And he was Moshe's father-in-law. So he separated this man, Chever. He immigrated from the old homestead in the south where their family lived, and he went north on his own. Vayet Ololo, and he pitched his tent. He kept on, they were shepherds, so they kept on moving with their sheep and pitching their tent. Ad Elon B'Tza'ananim, until he came to Elon. which is really the end of the Chula Valley. The end of the Chula Valley. The Gemara identifies it, the Yerushalmi identifies it as a place called Aganya the Kedesh. So at the time of the Gemara, they knew exactly where the place was. We no longer know exactly where it is. But that was Elon B'Tzananim, Asher Es Kedesh, which is not far from Kedesh. So, look at the story, right? A man, undoubtedly, he moved because of economic or social or family reasons. He didn't want to stay with the rest of the group in the southern part, and he takes his family and he moves north looking for his fortune, for his future, for whatever a person looks for. A person moves, he's mobile. But the Ribono Shel Olam didn't move him for that reason. The Ribono Shel Olam was moving him because his wife has a rendezvous with Sisera. And therefore, she has to get there. She has to be near the field of battle. Well, if they stay south in Jericho, she's never going to get there. So one day he comes home and he says, listen, dear, we're moving. So the Gemara always points that out to us, that we think that we are independent agents. We do what we want to do. But in reality, our feet lead us to where our destiny lies. And every human being in his or her own life, if we think about it and analyze it, see many times in our lives that we went to do one thing and it came out a completely different purpose, a completely different thing happened. Rabos machashovos belevish v'atzas Hashem hi sokun, it says in Tehillim. Many are the thoughts that exist in the heart of a human being. We all know why we're going, where we're going, what we're doing. But v'atzas Hashem hi sokun, God's idea, what the Ribono Shel Olam has in store for us, that is what will happen, and that is what will take precedence. So that's what happens here. So the Tanakh, in this one sentence, posed her in the proper place. Here she is. I know she got nothing to do with the war, and she's unaware of the whole situation. She's a nice room lady, and they're trying to make a go of it in the new part of the country. Not, yeah, she was Jewish. They were descended from Gerim, but they were Jewish. Yagidu Sisera, the spies, the information, the CIA came and reported to Sisera, Kiolo Barak Beravinoam Har Tovor, that the crazy Jews, they were all of a sudden, they're organizing an army and they're going up to the mountain of Tabor, to Har Tovor, and that there's a whole Jewish army there. And Sisera realizes the strategic value of Har Tovor. He knows that he cannot leave it indefinitely in the hands of the Jews, because then that will cut the communications through the center of the country. So what he should have done, what the correct tactic would have been in perfect hindsight, would have been to starve them out, to force them to come to war. And then he could cut them to pieces. But he underestimates the enemy, and his haughtiness, his pride, the Ribono Shel Olam leaves him. It's always like that. Pride comes before a fall. The pride, the arrogance leads always to defeat. Underestimating the enemy, thinking that he can do it. That works both ways, as we in our generation can testify. So Vayazek Sisera et kol richbo, Sisera mobilized his entire armored corps, all the chariots that he had. Shameos Rechev Barzel, 900 chariots, iron chariots. That's were the tanks of its time. The chariots, the method of the chariots were that the chariots went they went in groups of three, in a triangle. With the lead chariot was in the apex in the middle, with two chariots behind it, one to the right and one to the left. The chariots had on the side of them vicious cutting knives, and the chariots drove straight through the enemy. And you had this immense phalanx of armor, there was no way to stop it. Because even if you scored a direct hit on the chariot driver, the horses kept on going. So you could only do it by killing the horses. But the horses were so armored, and they went at such a swift pace, that it was difficult to stop all of the horses, right? So if you have, imagine you have 900 chariots, you have 300 of these triangles coming at you at once, so how many horses will you stop? 30%, 40%, 70%. But enough of them will get through that'll make mincemeat of the line. That's the same idea of the overkill which exists today in missile warfare, etc., or in mass tank warfare, is that they discount in advance. 70, 80, 90% will get knocked out, but some of them will get through. And when those get through, then it's enough to break the defense. It's enough to break the army. So he brought his 900 chariots, and the entire army that he had with him, Charoshes Hagoyim, the name of a great place, Charoshes Hagoyim, the furnace, the industrial heartland of Canaan, Charoshes Hagoyim. The Charoshes Hagoyim is also not far from Ayelet HaShachar. The guides will be happy to show it to you. And there's also an excavation, and you can see the old furnaces, the Canaanite furnaces. It's the beginning of the Iron Age. It's the beginning of man being able to make these kinds of tremendous mechanical tools, being able to work with iron and with iron and with bronze. First it was bronze, and then later it was iron. So that was called Mecharoshes Hagoyim, and he brought them down to Nachal Kishon, to the river of Kishon, which is under the mountain of Tavor, and he had them cross the river, so now he's trapped between the mountain and the river in a terrible strategic situation. Now, what happened also was, the Medrash tells us, that the allies of Sisera, the other tribes, closed off all of the passes from the south, north into the Galilee, so that none of the Jews from the south could come to reinforce Barak in the war. Vatomer devorah el Barak. That's a famous military statement that one of the reported in every war, but the import of the statement is the same as, those poor people, they've got us surrounded now. That's what happens here. She says, oh, that idiot, right? Now he's here, right? He's got us surrounded. Now he's going to get it. Vatomer devorah, they say it much more colorfully, but since this is being recorded. Vatomer devorah el Barak, kum. Arise now. Kum means not only arise, but, be a strong man. She's pumping him up all the time. Because he sees the 900 chariots in the army, and he sees that the passes are blocked, and he doesn't see it. Today is the day that God is giving Sisera over in your hands. Hello, Hashem Yotza lefanecha. Don't think you're going to do it. God is going to fight for you, right? You're right. You're a shmendrik. You can't do it. Your army is weak. They're not going to be able to. But God is going to fight with you, for you. Hashem yilochem lachem. God will fight for you. Today is God's day. So go ahead. And again, in the words of the Medrash, like she kicks him out into war. Forces him to go. He's got 100 excuses why not to go. They're not ready, and then tomorrow will be better, and it'll be more strategic. She says today, Hayom ki zeh hayom. This is the day. And that's the phrase that David HaMelech incorporated into Tehillim, into Hallel. Zeh hayom, asa Hashem. This is the day. There's a time. There's a day. This is the day. Today, if you go today, you win. If you go tomorrow, I don't know. But today, you have to go. Vayered Barak mehar Tavor. So Barak went down from Har Tavor. He brings the army down. Vaseres alofim ish acharov, and the 10,000 men followed after him. That's the last thing in the world that Sisera expected, that the Jews are going to come out and attack him. When all the odds are against, and he was taken by surprise. The surprise is caused by his own arrogance. It's caused by his enormous pride. But nevertheless, the surprise is going to be complete. The surprise will be overwhelming. The surprise will destroy him. because he is unable to get his line of defense ready in time. So the 900 chariots aren't going to help him, because there was no gas in the gas tank. The Israeli army in the Yom Kippur War had only 7 tanks on the Golan, because they were so sure, 7 tanks, because they were so certain that Syria wouldn't dare. 2 weeks before, they just shot down 13 Syrian MiGs in 2 minutes. So they had 7 tanks on the Golan. The Syrians attacked on Yom Kippur with 2,420 tanks. 2,420 against 7. The Yom Kippur War is the greatest mess of our time. It makes everything else look like nothing. The Syrians were through in 20 minutes. They were almost to Tiberias. And then they stopped because they couldn't believe it. They said there must be a tremendous trap here. They waited a whole day. They waited a whole day. They could have been in Haifa. There was nothing between them. But that was, again, the arrogance. And that's why they all got fired. And that was the Suez line, the Bar-Lev line, had the Israelis had built a series of oil pipelines that threw oil on the waters of the Suez, and then they would light it with a match, and the whole Suez Canal would be on fire, which would prevent, or certainly impede, any easy crossing of the canal. That's a great idea. They spent like, $4 or $5 million to put in the system. And then they decided that the Egyptians aren't going to attack. It's crazy. So they let it all fill up with sand. And then the day that they needed it, it was all full of sand. That's all of life is like that, right? What do you need the fire drills for? You're never gonna have a fire, right? What do I need a spare tire for? I got 4 good tires. Right? Whenever you say things such as that, right? Murphy invented the law that it has almost no exceptions. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And that's what happens to Sisera. Sisera has underestimated the enemy. He's not prepared. He's not psychologically prepared. He came to have a good time. He didn't come to have a real war. And all of a sudden, these 10,000 soldiers are falling on his camp. And the Tanakh doesn't describe the battle for us, but the Medrash does, that barak simply outflanked them. He didn't have 10,000 men run across the whole line. He had 10,000 men run on one flank of the line. And when they turned the flank, so then the whole camp went into bedlam. Which has always been the strategy in war, is to turn the enemy's flank, because then you attack them from the side, not from the front. And then you get them starting to run. Once you get them starting to run, the panic ensues. Once the panic ensues, it's all over. They can't get them back, they can't put the pieces back together again. And here, he's trapped between the river and the mountain. And on top of it, he's got a tremendous amount of people there who don't belong there. Spectators, bootleggers, camp followers, women. Now, when you got to run, so if you're going to have a victory, then it's very good. But if you're going to have a defeat, they certainly impede you. The first battle of Bull Run, which was the first battle of the American Civil War, so all of Washington came out to watch the battle. The Union Army was almost destroyed because they couldn't get it home, because the roads were clogged with the spectators. It was like going to the football game. So, Vayohom Hashem es Sisera ves kol harechev ves kol hamachane lefi cherev lifnei barak. Vayohom is that he made such a muhumra, such a confusion, such a panic, such a chaos. So Rabboni Shalom did that. I'm giving you I'm telling you how the New York Times would report it, how Drew Middleton would write it up. But that's not what happens. What happens is that the Rabboni Shalom did it. Except the Rabboni Shalom appears to us in these fashions. The Rabboni Shalom brought this tremendous confusion on the camp of Sisera. All of the chariots, everything that he brought that should have been an asset now became a liability, because everything got in the way. The Medrash says they were crushed by their own chariots. Their own horses went wild. And they were all slain. The army was destroyed. and there was nobody left. In the space of a few hours, the entire army of Sisera, the entire army of Yovin Melech Canaan was destroyed. In the Song of Devorah, we'll see that the river, the Nachal of Kishon, ran red with blood. That was its color. And that there were so many corpses there that the corpses built like a dam that the river could not flow anymore. This, by the way, isn't if anybody here except me is a Civil War buff. It happened in the American Civil War a number of times. The James River, the Chickahominy River, a few times where the South was able to, just to stop the river. The river ran red, and Teetham Creek in Maryland, so many thousands of soldiers were killed in the river that the river actually was red. So that's what happened here. Sisera's army is destroyed. Vayered Sisera ma'ala merkava vayonos beraglov. Sisera saw that it was all over, and Sisera's got the big official chariot, right? He's got the Lincoln Town Car. And on it it's painted with his coat of arms and emblazoned and everything. He knows he's a dead duck if he stays in that chariot. That's the one they're looking for. So he did what, for instance, the Nazis did in the Second World War. They changed identity papers with poor privates and other refugees on the road, and they became somebody else, and they went and hid. So Sisera goes off in a chariot. He's no longer the great man on the chariot. Vayonos beraglov, and he fled on foot. The Medrash says he went in a different direction. He tries to blend in like he's one of the refugees, like he's got nothing to do with the war. And he ran away from the battlefield. And they missed him. He got past the pickets. He got past the guards that were looking for him. The Tanakh doesn't tell us the scene, but you can well imagine the scene. And you can well imagine how they were looking for Sisera. Because that was it. They were afraid as long as Sisera is alive, so he'll get another army and we'll be back again. Uvorok rodaf acharei harechav acharei hamachaneh. Barak, surprised at his own victory, got into the enthusiastic swing of the thing. So now he himself is personally pursuing because he wants to get Sisera. He sees that the prophecy of devorah has come true, and now he takes heart, and he pursues. Ad Charoshes Agoyim, and he pursues it all the way back to the Charoshes Agoyim, to their original headquarters, all the way back to the Jordan. And they therefore destroyed that camp, the secondary camp, all the supply camps. Everything was destroyed because there was no defense. Sisera had lost everything. Lo nishar ad echad. Nobody was left. Ad echad. So ad echad, the Medrash says, whenever it says ad echad, it means that one was left. The one is Sisera. He's the only one that's left. Charoshes Agoyim, by the way, is on Nachal Kishon. If you want to see Nachal Kishon today, it's in Haifa, just north of Haifa. It runs between Haifa and Aku. You know where Kiryat Motzkin is, and all the other little places, the suburbs from Haifa that lead to Aku. So right there in the middle is the little creek, Nachal Kishon. It's in the industrial area. Nice and polluted today also. Sisera nos beraglov. So he ran away on his feet, and he's looking for refuge. And he comes to the house of this man, Heber Akeni, whom God again has placed by seeming coincidence. I'll tell you one more thing about the American Civil War, that we won't talk about it again, but you want to hear a coincidence? The first Battle of Bull Run was fought, the Confederate headquarters was in the house of a farmer by the name of McLean's farm, and the house was destroyed. in the Battle of Stonewall Jackson saved the Confederate Army in that first encounter, and the famous encounter that turned the battle was at McLean's farmhouse. So when the battle was over and McLean took a look at all the damage, he said, "I ain't staying here." So he moved to Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. And the meeting between Grant and Lee, where the Civil War ended, was in McLean's front room. So that's also hashgacha. He moved 300 miles to get out of the war, right? The war began in his front room and it ended in his front room. The hashgacha of the Ribono Shalom is such, so everybody tells over that story and then they keep on going, right? So that's it. It's nice to see. I subjected my wife and children to my Civil War tours, so we were there in McLean's area. That's nice and all. So I'm sure, the kids said we're going to have ice cream, let's go on. What can you see there, right? It's mind-boggling. What are the odds of such a thing happening? 20 trillion to 1. Who gets no number to imagine such a thing? And the whole story is there, and everybody looks and smiles and keeps on going. Hello, devorah, right? Must be something. So here also, poor Yoel, she's minding her own business. And all of a sudden, here's this big guy, he shows up at the door. He comes to the tent of Yoel, the wife of Heber Akeni. Yoel is one of the Chazal, we'll see how devorah describes her, but Chazal place her on a pedestal as being one of the truly remarkable women in the history of the world. And why did he run there? Even though Heber Akeni were Jewish and they were Gerim, but there was a treaty that allowed them to live on the grounds of Yovin Melech Hatzor, and therefore he thought that he would be able to find refuge there because there was some sort of legal agreement between them. So the Meforshim say that even though they were Jews, etc., they never took an aggressive stance against the Canaanites. They never participated in any of the Jewish rebellion. So therefore, he thought that he would find refuge. So she sees the opportunity. In her heart, she sees that the Ribono Shalom, that's not an accident that he came in. And she sees the moment to strike the blow that will forever free the Jewish people from Yovin Melech Canaan. But she does it a great sacrifice to herself, because as we will see, she seduces him. The Gemara calls it Aveir. The Tanakh doesn't describe it in detail, but the Gemara does. The Gemara says it's Aveir Lishmo. She did an Aveir Lishmo. Sometimes the person does a mitzvah, shalom lishma, does a good thing, but he doesn't mean it, and God doesn't like it. Sometimes the person is such a great person that the person does the aveira, but does it 100% for the sake of heaven, and the Ribono Shalom gives him credit for it. It gives her credit for it. The Tesis in Rosh Hashanah discusses it. That she's one of the few people in the world that is privileged to say that the person did an aveira lishma. Not did an aveira, we have a lot of people, but did an aveira lishma. Did an aveira for the sake of heaven. Because that is how she sees what's going to happen. And that's a story that repeats itself in Jewish history. Yehudis, in the time the Hashmonaim kills the Greek general the same way. She seduces him and invites him to a wine and cheese party and gives him latkes, and he wakes up without his head. It's a story that repeats itself many times. And men being men, it is not hard to do. And therefore, that's the Lashon Vatetse Yoel. She went out. The word Vatetse, when it's used in Tanakh, in Chumash or Tanakh, regarding women, always has a sensual meaning to it. The Gemara says regarding Leah, regarding Dinah, That's the word that's used. It has an overtone to it, a physical overtone to it. That's what happens here. She went out to get him. And she's naturally, she's going to flatter him, and the idiot's going to get killed. And she said to him, Surah Adoni, come here, turn aside, my master, come here. Surah Eli, come to me. So she means that physically. Al-Pira, don't be afraid, I won't give you over. So, he's in the middle of running for his life, but he always has time for this. He's also human. Vayosar Eileha ha'ohela. He turned to her to come into her tent. And then Tanakh doesn't describe it, but the Gemara says she seduced him, they had relations, and then he was exhausted. She covered him with a blanket, and he fell asleep. And he is tired, so he asks her in a minute, he asks her for some water or something, and she gives him milk, hot milk, and a potion, and she puts him out, and then she kills him. And that was her plan from the beginning, from the first moment she saw him.